Today I'd like to welcome Jordan Rudess, the keyboardist for Dream Theater. He's had the pleasure to come play at the LaFaro Center for the Performing Arts. Thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and chat a little bit today about you, your history, and keyboarding and playing and creating music. One of the things I wanted to get into is that you have this wonderful knack for, I'll call it new instruments, right? You seem to have had in your past, you play very expressively with the keyboard, right? You use the wheel, you do all these great stuff with it, but somewhere along the line when you got introduced to this idea of a touch screen, it spurred something in you and started you down a path of other stuff. Can you elaborate on that?
It did. Well, you know, I started out playing classical piano, and I loved that. It was wonderful. And my life was really focused around playing classical piano. I went to Juilliard. I was going to be a pianist. One day, you know, I discovered progressive rock and, you know, electronic keyboards and synthesizers and organs, and my head started to kind of bubble and explode. And I realized there was so much that one could do with keyboards, so much power, and that I could kind of enter the sonic world. And I've always been really, really sensitive to sound. I'm always like, what's that sound? What's that sound? So when I discovered synthesizers, it was like, oh my God, I can play a key and I can like turn a knob at the same time, and it opened up a different part of my brain for kind of like this musicality and expression, which was awesome. So the Mini Moog was really the first instrument that really took me very far
So what year
into
was
that world. Oh, what year was that? That was around 74, something like that.
So the same time Emerson and those guys were starting to use it? And
Kind of around then. And then fast forward to when the iPhone came out. The first iPhone made a horrible sound and didn't have anything on the screen. It was awful. But it was an amazing device, as we all know. And I would sit there and actually move my hand just silently on the screen. And I really felt like there was something to that, something to having each finger kind of move independently on the screen. I thought it was really, really cool. I devised a plan to work with one of the developers that I was keeping my eye on that was starting to make apps for the iTunes store. I thought, this guy looks like he could do something. So I called him up, and he was really into it. And we developed an application called Morph Wiz, which was this very, very cool application where each finger was kind of like an independent entity. I could show it. I'll show it to you. So Morph Wiz is very, very cool. My first app.
by the way, that'll see it too.
From years ago, this is my first app. And what's cool about it is it operates in kind of this idea of either vertical lines to express the notes. Like you could, you know. And as you move your finger along a vertical line, or even along the playing surface itself,
Sweet.
does all kinds of cool stuff. So my idea was to have something where every note that you play could be totally independent. Meaning, let's go to a sound like this one where you go. And also, it responds to tilting of the screen. So I can bend some notes and not others. I can move some up or I can move some down. And every finger is totally independent. So that's how it all got started, kind of putting together this sonic and visual world as well. With
It's beautiful, yes. It's kind of a game. It's kind of fun to play too.
So it was a dream turned into reality, really, and it all started from there. And actually, the second application that I made is called Sample Wiz. Sample Wiz is really cool because it allows you to walk around and always have a sampler with you. And actually, here at the LaFaro Center for the Performing Arts, I made great use of it. Jerry has an amazing piano that he keeps outside his barn that people who come to the Performing Arts Center know. And it's been sitting there and it's been gathering dust and getting icy in the winter, and animals have been climbing on it, and it's really a very interesting and unique instrument. So I thought, actually today, let's go out and sample it using Sample Wiz. This is an application I made 10 years ago, but it's still really useful. So like an example, I actually put the samples on my phone. So these are some of the sounds of Jerry's Jerry's piano out there. So, right? And some of this stuff is like a little bit weirder. And Sample Wiz lets you not only take the original sample, which might have been scraping a knife along the strings, but then you can also modify it and play it in Sample Wiz. And what's cool is you always have a sampler in your pocket, so it's right there. So you can, I can change the octave. So
Have a sampler in your pocket. Right.
So to this day, this application is really, really useful and still really, really cool. So this is the second one.
Very nice.
So it got me into this whole world of like, how do I use this touch screen to do really cool things, interesting things?
So I know that you started, well, that it was the Seaboard that sort of did similar type of things. Was that before or after GeoShred? How did that?
That was a little bit like after GeoShred, I think, at the timing. No, it was GeoSynthesizer, which was the predecessor to the Seaboard. So I was working on GeoSynthesizer, and then the Seaboard started to come out. And then I worked with a company, it's called Rolly, a very, very cool company that was started by a friend of mine, Roland Lamb, who's a very creative and amazing inventor. And I went to work with him and consulted for him and kind of supervised, if you will, the whole way that the Seaboard actually controls pitch, because the Seaboard's a very cool instrument. It's mostly black, and when you play on the keys, your fingers don't actually have anything that actually depresses up and down. It's more of a spongy type of a feeling where your finger presses into
But something happens. You do get some tactile feedback.
You get a lot of feedback, and your finger can go on the y-axis, or it can go on the x-axis, or it can go into the key. And you know, one of the challenges was, how do you make an instrument where people aren't going to always play out of tune if they can be like floating around and moving and it's all flexible like that? So I spent some time, because I could totally relate to that vision, to have something like a GeoShred or Sample Wiz or Morph Wiz in the hardware world was a dream come true for me. And my friend was making it happen with a company and with the people he needed to actually pull that off. So it was a very interesting project, and to this day they're still doing interesting things.
And then with GeoShred, that was another, this is interesting. You've got this morphing over time, getting more complex. I don't say complicated, but...
Yeah, GeoShred is my latest instrument. GeoShred is, well, the latest and the greatest, really. It's a very serious instrument. The people around the world are really using it as an extremely serious instrument. They're playing GeoShred.
That's awesome,
like, that
isn't it?
is their instrument. A lot of the Indian players, the guys who were doing like Carnatic music, are using GeoShred a lot. You can do things like where you might get a drone going like this, and then you can have any of the different ragas on the playing surface. So, I've got like different notes that are highlighted, and this is a particular Indian raga. So it shows me where the root is, which is here.
So this brings up an interesting question I've had. So this is not a keyboard. So
No.
your ability to hit the keys and be on them, isn't it different? And did you learn that over time, or was it really native for you?
Well, first of all, it is totally different. It's a different kind of a thing. The layout is a different thing. But I always feel like, my fingers are very developed. I've worked for so many years on gaining independence. So being able to touch things, hit them, in different ways, that's not a big deal for me, especially, probably because I have perfect pitch, so I can kind of dial in to where the notes are. And actually on GeoShred, one of the nice things is you'll see, it shows you the name of the notes.
Yes.
So I can say, okay, in my mind I want to hit a D, and I go, oh, let's turn the volume back up. Yeah, so if I want to hit a D down,
You're on D.
I go F, E, ba, da, 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 da. So I hear it in my head, I know what notes they are, I see them, and then I can do it. But moving my fingers, it's the same as...
Yes, our mere mortals who don't really have that independent finger dexterity.
So that
I couldn't
helps a
relate to
lot.
that at first, but once you said it, it made sense.
The dexterity, but like how the notes are laid out, that's definitely a different kind of thing. Like, on GeoShred, it's more like a guitar, really. So like an example being, so if I call up something like an acoustic guitar here, you can see that in the vertical rows, it's almost set up like strings.
Yep.
So it's like a perfect fourth. It's the interval of a fourth. And there are 6 strings. So obviously that's very different than a keyboard. So it's more like a guitar. I play a little guitar in my life too. Okay. So if I want to play a scale, like a C major scale, I would be playing it.
So what's highlighting in the circles as you hit notes?
C is the key of C. Right now, C major is on the playing surface. But what's really interesting is that you can have anything on the playing surface. You could even have something like a blues scale on the playing surface. So let's see, I'll call that up. Shred House Blues. So this only has the notes of the blues scale on it.
You can't miss them then.
You can't miss them. And if you just run your finger on the playing surface, a little bit.
So if you got some rhythm going, the band's going, all you got to do is touch the screen.
Well, the beauty of GeoShred for the non-musician or the person who's always been a listener but wants to play is you could put on the backing track, right? And then you could start to, with one finger, you're like,
that's awesome.
I can be looking at you and doing circles. And actually, there's some magic here too. One of the pieces of magic is that when you slide across, it's going to play each note very definitely. Yep. But when you stop, you can still do a little vibrato, like.
That's nice.
Now a little harder in the slide mode. But still, when your finger goes down in a note, anywhere it's going to be in tune. So like. But if you slide.
Yeah, very clever. So how long did it take you with feedback with the developer to get this to do what you wanted to do?
These good things take time.
Yeah.
Certainly maybe over a year until we had GeoShred kind of where we felt like we could release it.
It's a beautiful app.
It really is cool. It's all based on a physical model of, it's physical model technology that was developed by one of my partners whose name is Julius Orion Smith. He's a professor at Stanford University.
Nice.
And his partners, Pat Scandalis and Nick Porcaro, worked with me on developing this concept.
That's awesome. What a great invention.
Cool.
Regardless of what happens musically, this you think will carry on, right?
Yeah, because it's their instrument. It can't go away now because that's what they play.
Rudess, Fender,
There you go.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Wisdom music.
Yeah, there you go. I love that.